Welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner. I'm your host, Tiffanie DeVan, a higher education access partner here with the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency. And joining me today is Diona Brown, my fellow higher education access partner and co-host of our quarterly Hot Topics segment, a segment where we will discuss a variety of trending topics surrounding financial aid and post-secondary options. Today's Hot Topics center around FAFSA simplification and the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, PSLF.
So for those of you who don't know, there are about 13 of us located throughout the state of Pennsylvania as access partners, and we work with secondary schools, post-secondary schools, community organizations, legislative offices to make sure that you have the information that you need in order to apply for financial aid. One of the biggest things that we do is we do financial aid nights at high schools, and we help students and families complete the FAFSA during FAFSA completion sessions at your local high schools. So that is why the FAFSA simplification is a great topic for us to be talking about today.
All right, so Diona, let's get started. One of the things I want to talk about before we actually tackle FAFSA simplification is simply what FAFSA is, FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, and it is the primary application that students must complete in order to be considered for financial aid from the federal government, from the state government, schools, as well as some scholarship organizations. Because you and I assist students and families all the time regarding FAFSA, we also get questions from them. One of the key things we know is that this can be a very complicated form. It's a very overwhelming form. The FAFSA form itself has been around for over 30 years, actually 30 years as of July. And if there's anyone out there listening who's as old as I am, then they may remember that the FAFSA application itself started as a paper form. We used a number 2 pencil, I believe, and you had to kind of like bubble in the different forms. You had to answer every question, and every question there was at least 100 questions that was on the form. So it was tedious, it was lengthy, and it was very confusing at times. FAFSA has advanced. It's now an online form, an online application that many students and families can complete, and they can even start it, stop it, come back to it in 45 days, and finish the whole process. You can complete it at studentaid.gov. And so one of the things I want us to really focus on right now with FAFSA simplification is talk about how some of the changes are going to make it hopefully will make it a lot easier for students and families to complete the form itself. So let's get started about some of the changes that have taken place, or just FAFSA simplification itself.
Yes. So just to kind of interject on what you were saying about the FAFSA. I remember when I did the FAFSA for the first time, it was a paper application, and I was at the kitchen table with my family, and my parents were like, what is all this? And I was just like, you know what? This is something I have to do, to get financial aid. And it was an overwhelming process. So it's really great to see how far the FAFSA has come since then with enabling students to do it online. And so what the Department of Education has announced now is that the FAFSA Simplification Act is something that they have made to make it easier for students to complete the FAFSA. And it will also make the allocation of federal student aid fairer. So this was something that was signed into law December 27th, 2020. Now, if we back up to last school year, one of the big changes that they made last school year was there is a selective service question on the FAFSA that asks males, are you registered with a selective service? There's another question on the FAFSA that asks students about whether or not they have a previous drug conviction. So starting last school year, even though those questions were still on the FAFSA, the schools no longer use that information to determine eligibility for federal aid. So that was one of the biggest changes. Going into the 23-24 school year, those questions will now be removed from the FAFSA entirely. So I think that will be a welcome change from students and families.
Before you go further, I wanted to point out, I do agree. I think it is a welcome change. Something also I wanted to point out regarding the selective service. Males who are 18 years of age or older are still required to register for selective service. It's just that they won't be disqualified from applying or receiving federal financial aid if they do not register for selective service. And that was one of the big changes that was out there. And honestly, when I talk to students right now, many students who are 18 years of age, they have no idea what selective service is. So I find myself actually explaining what selective service is. So for those students and our listeners who are out there, remember that males, the ages of between 18 and 25 must still register with selective service. It just does not disqualify you from receiving financial aid.
Right. You're right about that. So I think having those questions removed will make it less confusing for students and families. So that's definitely a welcome change. In addition to that, for 23-24, this Department of Education is also adding a new demographic survey on the FAFSA. This is the first time this has ever been done on the FAFSA. This has nothing to do with eligibility for financial aid. It is simply just data collection for the Department of Education. So families will see that demographic survey on the FAFSA for 23-24. And then for 24-25, we have even more changes. I think that one of the biggest changes that they are doing is they are removing the IRS data retrieval tool. So for students and families that have never done the FAFSA before, basically when you fill out the FAFSA, you do have to fill out a lot of income and asset information on the FAFSA. One of the tools that they currently have to make that easier for students and families is an IRS data retrieval tool, which allows you to import your tax information directly into the FAFSA. That enables you to answer less income questions on the FAFSA and makes it a lot easier to complete. Right now on the FAFSA, in order to use that tool, you do have to agree to that. You also have to indicate your filing status. You have to verify your address information. And then you go through a couple of keystrokes in order to make that happen. Starting with 24-25, they are actually removing that, so it will be more of a seamless process to students and families, and that information will automatically be imported again, making it easier for students and families to complete the FAFSA and making it a quicker process. So that's a very exciting change.
Absolutely. And then something else I also wanted to point out, you kind of hinted at this. If you're someone who's completing the FAFSA application for the very first time, FAFSA simplification won't feel like it won't feel like you're doing anything different because you don't know anything else. Right. However, if you're someone who has completed a FAFSA application in the past, either for yourself or maybe you're a parent and you had to complete it for your children, possibly you're an educator or you're someone who assists students and families with completing the FAFSA, you will notice those changes. Something we also say is don't allow it to overwhelm you and you feel as if you have no resources. Studentaid.gov is a great resource. That is a website that's with the Department of Education. So the U.S. Department of Education holds studentaid.gov, and it's like an A through Z list of everything regarding financial aid. So it's a great resource to have. The other key thing is, as Diona stated, access partners. There are 13 of us throughout the state of PA, and we also assist with FAFSA completion nights. We're in high schools, we're in your local communities, and so we're also a great resource to help you get those forms completed. Also, don't forget that those post-secondary schools that you're planning to attend, as well as local high schools, local libraries, and community organizations also have information where they can answer questions about FAFSA. They can also assist you, or maybe they can direct you to a FAFSA completion session. And generally in the fall, we will list all of the FAFSA completion sessions that are open to the community to join in. So don't forget that is a resource, and don't allow it to overwhelm you.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tiffanie. And I think one of the things that I always like to point out to students and families when I'm helping them is don't be afraid to use that help tool on the FAFSA. One of the benefits of using the online FAFSA is that it does have a very nice help tool on there. So next to each question, there's a question mark. If you click on that question mark, that will expand the question for you and give you more information on what they're expecting for that question. In addition to that, when you do the application on studentaid.gov, there is skip logic already built into the FAFSA. And that's just a fancy way of saying, hey, when you answer the question a certain way, it's going to present a question to you based on how you answer the previous question. It may also skip certain questions depending on how you answer questions. And that means it's just going to make it easier and make the process flow better for you when you're using that online FAFSA application. So using the application on studentaid.gov is definitely the way to go.
Absolutely. But now some may ask, well, why is this information important? And that is because the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, is that primary application where students have to complete in order to be considered for financial aid. So remember, if you do not complete the FAFSA application, students will not be considered for grants, scholarships, some scholarships, not even student loans or work study. So you want to make sure that you complete it and you want to do it timely. And there'll be more information and topics that we have in the future talking specifically about FAFSA.
Right. And that's also another misconception that I think some families come into it as. They'll say, you know what, I'm not going to be eligible for any of these grant programs. Do I still have to do the FAFSA? Yes. Unless you plan on paying completely out of pocket, you definitely want to complete the FAFSA. A lot of schools, too, may use that for institutional money. So you could be missing out on money directly from your college if you do not complete the FAFSA. So if nothing else, you definitely want to complete the FAFSA. And that does come out every year on October 1st. So you want to make sure that you're on the lookout for that and you're ready to complete that FAFSA as it comes out every year. And you do have to complete the FAFSA for every year that you want to be considered for financial aid.
Absolutely.
And then I just wanted to touch on one more big thing that's going to be happening in the 24-25 school year for FAFSA simplification is they are replacing the EFC with the Student Aid Index. For those of you who aren't familiar, EFC stands for Expected Family Contribution. And basically what this is, it is a figure that the schools use to determine how much aid a student could be eligible for. And that term, has been, the topic of conversation and confusion for families because they hear that term and they think, oh, is this money that I have to come up with out of my pocket? No, it is simply a methodology the Department of Education comes up with to help schools to determine, how much aid they can award students. So they're replacing the EFC with something called the Student Aid Index. And part of that will also enable the process to be more fair when they are awarding aid and, just try to make the process a little bit simpler for parents to understand as well. So that terminology sometimes does matter.
Absolutely. Another thing that I think is super exciting about the changes with FAFSA simplification, I don't know why I can't get that word out today, FAFSA simplification, is that there will be less questions on the FAFSA form. Yes. So right now, because there's skip logic, some families can answer up to 100 questions. However, with FAFSA simplification, it's going to take the questions down to less than 40. So that should be really exciting. It shouldn't take anyone half as long as it did. Hopefully, it doesn't take anyone half as long in order to complete it. And hopefully it doesn't feel as intimidating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think these will be some welcome changes. And, as we get more information about FAFSA simplification, we'll definitely be sending out communications to let you know what we hear from the Department of Education. So that's just giving you a sneak peek of what's about to happen.
All right. Good stuff. So now we're going to move on to our second hot topic, which is public service loan forgiveness, or again, as we're calling it, PSLF. Just to give a quick background, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program was established by the College Cost Reduction and Access Act of 2007. So it's been around since 2007. Now, for our listeners who aren't familiar with this program at all, it's a program that provides an opportunity for certain student loan borrowers to have their qualifying student loans forgiven by the U.S. Department of Education, which is very, very nice considering student loan debt is the second largest consumer debt that is out there. So Diona, go ahead. And I know you have a lot of good information about PSLF. So go ahead and share that with us.
Yes. So, one of the big knocks on PSLF has always been, this is this great program out there, but a lot of people are getting denied for PSLF. So one of the things that the Biden administration has done is they have created a temporary waiver to change and relax some of the rules for PSLF to make it easier for people to qualify for forgiveness. So that waiver actually expires on October 31st, 2022. So right now, if you remember nothing else, if you think that you could be eligible for PSLF, you definitely want to go to studentaid.gov and apply now.
One more time.
Studentaid.gov and apply now. And in order to apply, you just want to go to the PSLF help tool and fill that out. It'll walk you through the process step by step and see if you're eligible. Now, some of the exciting changes that are in effect right now during this waiver process is basically a lot of different loan types are now eligible for forgiveness. So previously on PSLF, only direct loans were eligible to be forgiven. Now, during the waiver process, direct loans, FEL loans, as well as Perkins loans also qualify. So payments that you have made towards those loan types can also count towards your 120 qualifying payments for loan forgiveness. Another exciting change is that payments on any payment plan can now count. So with regards to the original PSLF, only payments that were made under the standard repayment plan or an income-driven repayment plan counted towards loan forgiveness. Now, payments that you make on a graduated repayment plan, extended repayment plan, and so forth, all of those payments that you make on those payment plans now qualify. So that's super exciting, and I think that will help qualify tons of more people. But that's not it. Mm-hmm. They also are allowing late payments to count and payments that were made for less than your installment amount. So previously, you had to make your payment within 15 days of the due date, and it had to satisfy your entire monthly payment. Now they're allowing those payments to count. And then finally, you no longer have to be currently employed by your public service employer at the time forgiveness is granted. So previously, that was a rule. You had to be currently employed by the time forgiveness was granted. Now they're also waiving that. So these are very important changes that they've made to the program. I think it is a great time for people to apply if they already have not. Keep in mind, too, borrowers that have applied before and maybe have not been eligible, those applications are being reviewed to see if, due to these changes, that they could be eligible now. So it's a very exciting time for PSLF. I know a lot of borrowers are taking advantage of this waiver, but time is of the essence because we don't know if this waiver is going to be extended. So people definitely need to go out there and apply for forgiveness. And basically, one of the biggest things you want to look at when determining if you're eligible is your employer. Really, it's not a big factor. It's not really based on what type of job you do, but where you work. So if you work for any type of government, so that's state, local, federal, tribal, or if you work for a nonprofit, those are the biggest employer types that are eligible for PSLF. So if you work for one of those employer types, you definitely want to apply and see if you can be eligible for this program. So it's very, very exciting. Very exciting.
It is exciting. And I also, as I'm listening to you talk, because we work in higher education, so we deal with financial aid and we understand student loans. So if you're a listener and you're not totally sure what type of student loan you have, whether it's a FELP loan, a direct loan, one thing I tell everyone to do is go out to studentaid.gov. The website, again, will guide you on whether or not you qualify, what type of student loan you have, and it has all of the details and information that you need in order to complete your application. Again, like Diona said, October 31st, 2022 is the deadline. So you don't want to miss your deadline and possibly miss out on the benefit of having some or all of your student loans possibly forgiven. In addition to that, I also tell students and families, make sure that you have there's an employer piece, make sure that your employer fills out their section. Make sure all of the information is completed prior to you submitting the application. So I think we had a lot of good information with our FAFSA simplification as well as the PSLF. So again, just as a quick recap, if you're someone who wants to know more information about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program or apply, again, the website is studentaid.gov. And then regarding FAFSA itself in general, whether you or someone you know is planning to attend a post-secondary education, remember that the FAFSA is required in order to be completed in order to be considered for any type of federal, state, some institutional aid, as well as some scholarships. So you want to make sure that you complete it. Again, applications for the upcoming school year begin October 1st, 2022. If you're overwhelmed and again, you don't quite know how to complete the FAFSA or you need more information on it, that's what we're here for. We're higher education access partners here for PHEAA. You may reach out to us. If you are not sure who your access partner is, you can find us at PHEAA.org. You may also reach out to your schools and community organizations. So that does it for us for our very first episode of Hot Topics.
Yay!
We thank you for joining us and hope that you tune into all of our episodes of the Higher Education Access Corner. Find us wherever you listen to your podcasts or check us out on our YouTube channel, PHEAA Student Aid. Thank you and enjoy your day.
Thank you.